What other stuff was going on around then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably when I started to get into like event production and stuff. And this like, it took, I didn't want to get like a full-time job because I wanted to be available for recording and making music. And so I started picking up freelance work doing like even like brand ambassador marketing gigs where you're like standing, handing out flyers or handing out like samples of fucking sunscreen and shit like that. And, you know, then I started doing more like actual behind the scenes production where you're like loading in events or loading in, marketing activations. And I learned to, I fucking, yo, can you drive a 16 passenger van? And it's like, sure, like I'll do that. You know what I mean? Learn how to drive a van and be doing this production work. And then we did some work in Tower 7, which was weird because it was like not too many years after 9/11 and they had,
Question.
yeah.
What is Tower 7?
So Tower 7 is the third tower that fell during the 9/11, whatever you want to call it, attacks. Um, and it's one of those pieces of the puzzle that makes people like myself very suspicious of the whole scenario because it's like multiple blocks away and yet it just fell even though it wasn't hit by airplanes, and like it's the only other building in the area that just like magically fell to the ground and had like a huge insurance policy on it, and nobody really ever heard about it, and then they rebuild it mad quick. And the you know so yeah,
I mean, just to your credit, I sincerely had no fucking idea what it was,
yeah,
and I've watched Joe Rogan talk about this subject multiple times,
right,
and I still have no idea what it was until you just
yeah.
said it.
Yeah, it was another tower, and it was like where all these like financial records were kept, and like all it had this like huge insurance pot. From what I understand, it had this huge insurance policy that was taken out like right before 9/11, and it wasn't like highly publicized, and it just crumbled to the ground. It wasn't hit by an airplane; it just fell to the ground. Which is
Right.
like how buildings just be falling to the ground and shit.
Yeah,
Um,
just. Oh,
but
fair
yeah, so
enough.
we were doing some work in there, and I showed up to a shift, and they were like, "Can you drive a box truck?" And I was like, "Sure." You know what I mean? Got in a box truck. The lead had printed out directions from like MapQuest. There's no GPS on your phone,
God,
and
I
he
still
didn't look
remember
up.
that.
He wasn't from New York, and he was. I mean, now I'm realizing he was probably mad young, even though he was like older than me at the time. And he printed out regular directions, not commercial directions. And so it sent me on a, completely wrong, illegal route that went through Bear Mountain. And so I was on like a one way, like a one lane, two-way road on the side of a mountain in like a snow blizzard illegally in a box truck the first time I drove a box truck. So, um, yeah, just getting into production, and then eventually started event production, a labor staffing crew staffing company, because I saw that a lot of the clients that were hiring me and Vanguard and another friend of ours to do production work were hiring us because we weren't afraid to get busy physically, but we're also like analytical and can communicate and code switch and speak to a union crew who's like blue collar, third generation union white dudes, or speak to the other crews they had, which would be like 16-year-old kids from the Bronx, and then turn around and speak to the client. And like, since we know so many people through music and just through being in a city that don't want full-time work and want to have income and be flexible, we were like, yo, why don't you let us, like, you hire us to supplement these crews? Why don't you let us put together a crew?
Mm.
And so after like a year of begging a friend of mine who was a director of operations, or at the time probably just in the operations department at one of the main companies I was working for. I just begged him for years, and eventually he was like, "Yo, I made a case for it, and here's this job you guys can do." And it was like 16 people in a warehouse, um, doing packing boxes for bib pickup, which is like if you have a race and people sign up for like the marathon or sign up for like, a 5K to raise money for breast cancer or something, you get shipped a box with like your bib number and the safety pins and the t-shirt from the race. And so they needed 16 people to just pack up all those boxes and send them out. And within like a half an hour, I called back and was like, yo, I got all 16 people. Like, here's the list of names. And then actually that was like half people from the Heights, because my one of my best friends I grew up with is from Hillside Avenue, which is right off Dykeman, which is like the top neighborhood of the Heights, Dykeman. And um, he brought like all of his peoples that we grew up with. So yeah, from there, I was focusing both on business, running a business, and creating music. And I think I formed an LLC like production company around my music with some partners and an investor, and it also had the LLC for the event production stuff, and was kind of like juggling both of those things. Um, yeah, that was
No,
like,
that's like amazing. So let's just stop for a second, cause like, yo, you said a lot of cool stuff. But here's the thing: I'm seeing Nunzio's face, so I noticed a parallel between you and Nunzio. And keep in mind, this is Nunzio in the story of how he got to be working at Bad Boy and the engineering and stuff. And you both said yes to like everything. And you
mm,
both were able to code switch and adapt to the people you worked with without fear. You were both were willing to go above and beyond in the circumstances, and you both sought out cool opportunities with an open mind. And a lot of good stuff happened. Like, I mean, you just kind of casually dropped that you ended up with a couple of companies, and a lot of, because LLC is like company, right? I think. I mean, I'm not that big on that part of life right now.
yeah. Yeah, limited
Um,
liability company, or yeah.
So, like, I mean, how many people have come on here? I mean, you don't know the answer to this, but not many people have come on here and dropped out. Yeah, I've got two separate ones. I've separated my life. I've got this shit that's going to pay my bills, and then I got this shit for the music. It's separated intelligently. Now, I understand what you're doing because I structured my life in a way where I tried to keep shit separate too. So, some stuff's riskier than others, etc., etc. And, I kind of understand what you're doing here. But I just have to say, like, you're young, I think, when you're doing this, right? Like, this doesn't sound like you're that old when you're pulling this off.
I mean, in my 20s, in my mid 20s, I would say.
Yeah. I would argue that pulling off two limited liability companies in your mid 20s is in the equivalent of boss ass shit.